A boy walked onto a battlefield where seasoned warriors had refused to stand. And in that moment, everyone watching knew one thing: he was about to die. The air was heavy with fear, the ground trembling beneath the weight of a giant no ordinary man dared to face. For 40 long days, morning after morning, evening after evening, the giant had stepped forward, his voice echoing across the valley like thunder, challenging an entire nation to send just one man. Just one. And yet, not a single soldier moved. Not the strongest. Not the bravest. Not even the king. Fear had silenced them all. But then, everything changed. Because on this particular day, someone unexpected arrived, and what happened next would rewrite history forever. His name was David. Not a soldier. Not a warrior. Just a shepherd boy sent by his father to deliver food to his brothers on the battlefield. He wasn't supposed to fight. He wasn't supposed to stand out. In fact, he wasn't even supposed to be noticed. But the moment he heard the giant speak, heard the mocking, the insults, the challenge against the God of Israel, something stirred inside him. Something different. While the army trembled, David questioned. While others saw a problem, David saw something else entirely. And that difference would change everything. The giant's name was Goliath. He stood towering above every man, over 9 feet tall, covered in bronze armor that gleamed under the sun. His spear was massive, his voice commanding, his presence terrifying. He didn't just look unbeatable, he felt unstoppable. Every step he took shook confidence out of the soldiers of Israel. Every word he spoke crushed what little courage remained. "Choose a man," he shouted daily. "Send him to me." But no one came. No one dared. Until David. When David spoke up, the reaction was immediate. Laughter. Mockery. Even his own brother rebuked him, accusing him of pride, telling him to go back home where he belonged. "You're just a boy," they implied. "You don't understand what you're saying." And maybe, in their eyes, that was true. David didn't look like a warrior. He didn't have the experience. He didn't carry a sword. But what they failed to see, what they completely overlooked, was the one thing that made all the difference. David had something they didn't: faith. Word of his boldness reached King Saul, and soon David stood before the very man who himself had been too afraid to fight. Saul looked at him, studied him, and came to the obvious conclusion. "You cannot fight this man," he said. "You're too young. He's been fighting since his youth." It was logical. It made sense. It was exactly what anyone would say. But David didn't step back. He stepped forward. And then he said something that changed the atmosphere entirely. He spoke of the times he had faced danger before, not on a battlefield, but in the wilderness. "When a lion came, when a bear attacked my sheep, I didn't run," he said. "I fought. And God delivered me." That was the moment everything shifted. Because David wasn't talking about strength. He was talking about experience with God. The same God who had protected him before would protect him again. The same God who gave him victory in secret would give him victory in public. And suddenly, this wasn't just a fight anymore. This was something deeper. Saul hesitated, but eventually gave in. "Go," he said, "and may the Lord be with you." Then he did what any king would do. He tried to prepare David like a soldier. He placed his own armor on him, put a helmet on his head, handed him a sword. But something wasn't right. David could barely move. The armor was too heavy, too unfamiliar, too dependent on human strength. Slowly, he removed it all. "I can't fight like this," he said. And that decision would define the outcome of the battle. Because David understood something powerful. He didn't need what everyone else depended on. He didn't need armor. He didn't need a sword. He needed God. So instead, he took his staff, bent down, and picked up 5 smooth stones from a nearby stream. Just 5. No backup plan. No extra weapons. Just 5 stones and a sling. And then, he started walking toward the battlefield. Step by step. Calm. Focused. Unshaken. The same ground that caused trained soldiers to freeze became the path David walked with confidence. And then Goliath saw him. At first, he didn't take it seriously. In fact, he laughed. A deep, mocking, humiliating laugh that echoed across the valley. "Am I a dog," he roared, "that you come at me with sticks?" His voice dripped with contempt. He cursed David, threatened him, promised to tear him apart and leave his body for the birds. It was intimidation at its highest level, the kind that would make any ordinary person turn back, the kind that would break courage instantly. But David didn't turn back. Instead, he responded, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with boldness that stunned everyone listening. "You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin," he declared. "But I come to you in the name of the Lord Almighty." In that moment, the battle lines were redrawn. This was no longer man versus man. This was faith versus fear, trust versus intimidation, God versus impossibility. And then, everything happened at once. Goliath began to move forward, his massive frame advancing with confidence, ready to crush the boy in front of him. The ground seemed to shake with each step. The tension was unbearable. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the moment that would decide everything. But what David did next shocked them all. He didn't run away. He ran toward the giant. In a sudden burst of speed, David charged forward, reaching into his bag, pulling out a stone, placing it into his sling. One swing, two swings. The air tightened. Time seemed to slow down. And then, he released it. The stone flew through the air with precision. No hesitation. No doubt. Straight toward its target. And then, impact. It struck Goliath directly in the forehead. The giant froze. His expression shifted from confidence to shock. And then slowly, heavily, he fell. The ground shook as his body hit the earth. Silence followed. Complete silence. The man who had terrified an entire nation was down. But the story didn't end there. David didn't pause. He ran forward, stood over the fallen giant, and finished what he started. And in that moment, everything changed. The fear that had gripped Israel broke instantly. Courage erupted. The same army that had been silent for 40 days suddenly found their voice. They shouted. They charged. And victory was theirs. But here's the part that truly matters, the part most people miss. This was never just about a giant. It was about perspective. Because while everyone else saw Goliath as too big to defeat, David saw him as too big to miss. While others focused on the size of the problem, David focused on the power of God. And that difference made all the difference. Now pause for a moment and think about this. What if David had listened to his brother? What if he believed the fear around him? What if he turned back? We would never know his name. And that leads to a deeper question, one you can't ignore. What is your Goliath? Is it fear? Failure? Rejection? Doubt? Something that feels too big, too overwhelming, too impossible to face? Because just like David, you may feel unqualified. You may feel unprepared. You may feel like you don't have what it takes. But the truth is, you don't need to have everything. You just need faith. Because God doesn't choose people based on size, or strength, or experience. He chooses based on trust. And maybe, just maybe, the battle in front of you right now is not there to destroy you, but to reveal what God can do through you. So here's what I want you to do. If this story spoke to you, don't just watch and move on. Like this video. Drop an amen in the comments if you believe God is bigger than your battles. And subscribe for more powerful stories that will strengthen your faith and remind you that no matter how impossible things look, victory is still within reach. Because your breakthrough might be closer than you think.